Make sure, again, you check out DraftKings and use our code 365Chiefs. It'll be opening up here on Monday, so get ahead of the action. You can download the app now, I believe. Go check it out. And again, December 1st, this upcoming Monday, you can officially get that going. So excited for that. And again, use our code 365Chiefs. Okay, so we talked about the injury reports for both the Kansas City Chiefs and, of course, their opponent, the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys, a staple on Thanksgiving, and the Chiefs lately been a staple in the Super Bowl. But this season, this game, it's a bit different in the feel of it because both these teams are sitting in interesting spots. The Cowboys at 5-5-1, coming off a 21-point comeback against the Philadelphia Eagles. And at one point, they were down 21-0, scored at 24 unanswered points, and won that game on a Brandon Aubrey field goal. Kansas City coming off a very big win against one of the top teams in the AFC in the Indianapolis Colts this past week, having an overtime kick from Harrison Butker after a pretty decent comeback of their own. And both these teams looking to try and continue the quote-unquote playoff push. If you're asking the question, though, who needs this win more? I'd argue it's the Chiefs, and it's for this specific reason. When we look at the NFL and we look at their standings and basically how the playoffs are going to be, well, put, we can easily see that if you look at the AFC and the people who are ahead of the Kansas City Chiefs, they have some struggles with the tiebreaker because they don't have the tiebreaker against the Buffalo Bills. They don't have the tiebreaker against the Jacksonville Jaguars. They don't have the tiebreaker currently against the Los Angeles Chargers. However, they will play them one more time this season. Miami is coming up on their tail. Pittsburgh is a team who is in an interesting spot, who lost a game to go to 6-5. However, they have also lost their quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, in that game, so it could be a better situation maybe going forward now after having Mason Rudolph for the last week. You can get the tiebreaker against the Houston Texans when you play them, not this week, but next week, and that would be a very huge thing. You can get a tiebreaker against the Baltimore Ravens, which I put the Baltimore Ravens into this situation simply because they are also 6-5, and Pittsburgh is 6-5. The reason there was such widespread difference is because of the division. And if you win your division, you're put into that top 4 placement. So that's why the Ravens, as of right now, are in that 4 slot as compared to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which are in the 9 slot. Overall, for the Kansas City Chiefs, you're in the 10 slot. But for the Dallas Cowboys and the way that this game means, doesn't mean a substantial amount for them, for sure. But the Carolina Panthers, they don't also have the tiebreaker. They'll play the Detroit Lions soon here. But most of these teams, they haven't played or have beaten once, Philadelphia. The tiebreaker is not really there in that aspect. Obviously, Carolina is the one game that they can't get back now and they can win and, in theory, beat jumping the Carolina Panthers. But I would argue that this game is more important for the Kansas City Chiefs. And so what is what are the ways to attack this Cowboys team? For me, it's got to be about figuring out your run game. The secondary for the Dallas Cowboys, it's not it. And maybe this is a game where Patrick Mahomes goes off and throws for 400 yards and you only rush for 20 yards and that's whatever. Because this last game, you had a 100-yard rusher and Mahomes still threw for 350, yet you only scored 23 points. And so the biggest thing for me, and in my opinion, something that is going to be watched as a very big notion tomorrow, is red zone efficiency. And that's just for both teams because not only have the Chiefs had some struggles sometimes in the red zone or maybe finishing off drives is the better way to put it. You get some yardage and you break the 50 and then you kind of lose momentum. The Cowboys have had some similar efficiencies with their offense. However, the big thing is their offense has actually carried them in so many different aspects. If you look at the NFL and look at the basic stats, you can see that the Cowboys are actually a very good team in terms of offensive numbers. In fact, right now, they are the number 1 team in terms of yards per game total. Passing yards per game is where they really shine with 266.8 ranking in the first. However, guess who is second? The Kansas City Chiefs. And guess who has a worse secondary? I'll give you a hint. It's not the Chiefs. It's the Cowboys. Their secondary is very, very bad, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But again, in terms of rushing yards per game, that is also something to look at just because the Chiefs and Cowboys are also very close back here. But let's be honest, they both get their points, their scores off of the pass. In terms of scoring, though, it's a very wide margin here. Dallas scoring at a 29.1 point per game clip. Kansas City 4 points below that at 25.2. However, again, I go back to if the Chiefs and the Cowboys are relatively close on offense, then defense is what's going to be the quote unquote separator, right? That's what's something that we can look at. Well, that's where I think Kansas City is really going to have the edge, and they can stop the offense better than the Cowboys could stop the Chiefs offense. Because in terms of yards allowed per game, Kansas City here at the top tier. Meanwhile, the Dallas Cowboys, yeah, they're down here. You replace this with the lowest, or the highest yards per game, and Dallas is fourth worst in the NFL. Specifically, the passing yards are not in their favor. They're third worst in that. Overall, in points per game, though, the Cowboys have actually been able to just been okay, 28.5. That's second worst. So again, in terms of defense, it's Kansas City having the way, way, way better stats. And so if you're looking at this game from a holistic standpoint, trying to separate what the difference maker is going to be, it's really going to be about this Dallas Cowboys defense trying to stop Patrick Mahomes, because both offenses look to be relatively similar. But again, which offense is able to perform, which has a worse defense? It's the Cowboys. So if the Cowboys defense can play like they have been the past 2 weeks, obviously they had some additions at the trade deadline, trading for Quinnen Williams, making sure that defensive line is in a very good spot. They traded for Logan Wilson, the linebacker from Cincinnati as well. They also got returns of DeMarvion Overshown, a top pick for them back a couple years ago, was injured for majority of this year, got back. And then their third round pick, a cornerback who was a first round talent out of Eastern Carolina University, Javon Revel Jr., also a guy to watch out for on the Dallas Cowboys side of things. So in my mind, obviously, probably the last time I'll talk to you before the game, I do have the Chiefs winning this game. I believe they are the better team. Their offense is more prolific. And okay, let's this. Maybe the stats aren't more prolific, but I agree that the prolificness is more attainable with the Chiefs against the Cowboys defense rather than the Dallas Cowboys offense against the Chiefs defense. Now, that could be wrong. And obviously the Cowboys, excuse me, come into this on a very hot streak. The Chiefs, you come off a loss versus Denver, you beat Indianapolis. That's a huge thing in overtime. The Cowboys beat Philadelphia. I mean, these are two teams who legitimately beat one of the top teams in their sides of the NFL, both NFC and AFC in the prior week, and what you could call comeback wins for each. Now, obviously, it's a 21-point comeback for the Cowboys, and well, let's just say not as much for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, does that really make any difference in a lot of aspects? No, not really. But is it something to watch for? Yes, because the momentum is such a huge thing in football. Also, something to note, and obviously you have to kind of think about this when playing in a game that one team plays in every single year and another team plays in maybe, once every couple years. In terms of Thanksgiving Day games, the Cowboys record right now is a very positive one of 34, 22, and 1. So they are very much positive on Thanksgiving. In terms of the Chiefs on Thanksgiving Day, they will play for the first time in nearly 20 years. 20 years, as it was 2005 when, how it goes. So it's kind of crazy that this is the way that it is. But however, the Chiefs are 5-4 on Thanksgiving Day games, and 3 of those they were taking place while they were in the AFL. They went 0-1 in one game as the Dallas Texans before they moved to Kansas City in 1962. So a much bigger history, a much longer and wider history for the Cowboys, and a very positive record for them, might I say, on Thanksgiving. But for the Patrick Mahomes of the world, the Travis Kelce's, the Andy Reid's, it's time to come in here and knock them off their stirrups, let's say. You got to come in here. You got to get a win. I believe this game is more important for the Chiefs than the Cowboys, but it's neck and neck. Both these teams are going to be fighting. Both these teams are going to be looking at this as a game for their season, for their playoff lives in some aspect. And there's a lot there. There's a lot riding on it. There's a lot on both teams' shoulders. I just trust in the abilities of Patrick Mahomes over the abilities of Dak Prescott. Simply put as that. Both wide receiving cores are great. Dak Prescott, he's got CeeDee Lamb, he's got George Pickens. George Pickens been one of the best wide receivers in the NFL this year. But when you get everybody working on the Chiefs side with Xavier Worthy, Rashee Rice, and all of them, it is a very, very good mixture as well. So the game is tomorrow. Excited to watch that one. We'll make sure to get a post game out potentially later on tomorrow night. I know it's Thanksgiving, so might end up being Friday, little post game action, but we'll keep you updated with that throughout this week. We'll get the upload schedule, obviously, get a little more positive going. I did just move, so got to get my studio all set up again, but we are in a good spot and excited for the expectations and a lot more coming on this channel and on this platform, whether you listen on Apple Music, Spotify. We've got a bunch coming, so make sure you hit that follow button if you're on those two platforms, or subscribe if you're on YouTube. We appreciate each and every single one of you, and we'll see you next time here on the Chiefs Report. Peace out, everybody.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.